This is a demonstration of the model-to-disk functionality using the nHydrate visual modeler. Much like Entity Framework, nHydrate has a model file that contains all the model information. Also, like Entity Framework, this causes merge issues with a source control provider like Subversion. This is a big issue when trying to use Entity Framework in development groups. If user 1 and 2 are making changes to the model at the same time, the last to check in will get conflict issues. This occurs even when they're working on different parts of the model. Essentially, any changes using the standard Entity Framework modeler will cause a vast number of merge issues. This even happens when the only change you make is simply to move the entities on the diagram. We have tried to address this issue with the model-to-disk functionality. First, let's look at the model on disk. So I go to Explorer, and this is my generated code, and this is my console application that contains my model. If I look in here, we'll see the nHydrate file. It's an 8K file named firstmodel.nHydrate. Now let's go back to our model and turn on the model-to-disk property. Now it's true. Now press save. Nothing visually has changed. However, now let's look at the disk again. Go back over to Explorer. The first thing we'll notice is that the nHydrate file is now 1K. It's essentially a shell now. There's no information in it. It has become a placeholder to open the diagram in Visual Studio. Now there's a folder named _firstmodel.model. The name is derived from the model file, which was called firstmodel, and then .model is just tacked onto the end of it. If we explore the folder structure, you'll notice that all the entities and other model objects are in here. And here is the entity folder. Notice that there are numerous files for each entity. Each part of an entity is tracked in a single XML file. This essentially breaks the model into many small pieces. While it's possible to have merge conflicts, of course, this distributed model severely limits the number and kinds of conflicts that you can have. If two users are modifying different entities, you will never get a conflict. However, if two users are adding the same field to the same entity, you most certainly will get a conflict. And there are various stages in between. If two users are working on similar parts of the model, they most likely will it won't be a conflict. Things will just merge in just fine. But for most cases, the distributed model structure will vastly limit the source control conflicts that you'll have. This functionality is easy to toggle on and off. So let's go back to the model. I will just come here and turn the model-to-disk off. I'll press save. And if we go back to the file system, now you'll notice the nHydrate file is 8K again, and the folder is gone because we're in single user mode. This functionality works for stored procedures, views, and functions. The model is distributed into small XML files with one exception. SQL statements are in their own SQL files. Let's add a view. Let's go over to here. From the toolbox, let's add a view. And a view has a SQL statement, of course, which you can type anything you want to into. If we save and go back to disk, let's turn on the model-to-disk first. Model-to-disk true. And then go back over to disk. Now, if we look inside of the folder structure, under views, you will see various XML files, configuration, diagram, modules, but you'll also see a SQL file. Many users like to use SQL Management Studio or other third-party SQL editors. Now you can just open up this SQL file, modify it any way you wish, and you are not forced to use the nHydrate modeler to modify SQL files if you don't want to. This concludes the summary of how to use the distributed model-to-disk functionality of nHydrate.